Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is James Tagg, spiritual teacher, talking today on the topic of Spirituality 101, the basics, in brackets, stage 2. Now, having said that, I don't think you can really delineate in steps the spiritual path or life or process. I think there's lots of different angles. So it's just what I happen to be doing right now. Now, just to recap on stage 1, or what I did last week, I talked about being a seeker, how and why you start out and want to ask questions. Then number 2, your motivation. Is it for yourself or is it for others, to be in service? Number 3, I talked about oneness versus separation and various groups. Are you inclusive or are you exclusive? Number 4, I talked about vibration and coming from love and whether or not your vibration is high or low. And then the signs and symptoms. You might get goosebumps, or you might see number sequences like 1111 on the clock, or you might see blue lights. So sorry, my notes are just falling off the page. There you go. And then number 5, discernment. How do you know something is true? Like if you're seeking some information and you read a book, how do you know that that's true? And then I talked about the agendas that the angels or the Syrians and Palladians have in the galaxy, and also the darker or the reptilian agenda. And then number 6, I talked about your basic practice, time alone in nature, and working that out with a busy life. And then the ultimate goal for the planet. So there were 6 or 7 points that I thought were helpful at the time, and now I have another 6 or 7 or 8 processes. I'm going to talk about purification, I'm going to talk about centering, and then I'm going to talk about the body and energy, and then I'm going to talk about personal empowerment and how to avoid what on earth they kind of talk about, the 3-dimensional matrix mind. How do you choose to empower yourself and avoid and step out against that and follow your own path? And then I'm going to talk, inevitably, sometimes when people are spiritual, they might have a dark night of the soul or have a psychic attack. I'll talk about that briefly. And then talk about the importance of emotional or physical healing. A lot of people approach spirituality because they have some kind of illness, and on their path of recovery they learn something about themselves spiritually. And then I'm going to talk about how do you choose a path? Like, do you follow a religion? Do you become a Buddhist? Do you go to India and study under a Swami? Or do you just read a few books and then decide that you want to choose your own path and be guided by a higher power like angels? And then 5A, which is part of that, how do you reach a higher power, or how do you get information, or how do you contact angels or higher galactic beings? And then inevitably towards the end I'm going to talk about if you want to make that whole life choice a part of a career change, and quite often that happens when you raise your vibration significantly and you move away from lesser developed souls. It will affect your whole life, your family, and obviously your career. So I'll talk about that. That doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens to some people. So, okay, stage 1, purification. Why is purification important, and what does it mean? Hello, Emma and Susie and whoever's watching. So purification basically is looking at all areas of your life and where you can make improvements. Now, why would you want to make improvements? Well, when you start to work spiritually, your vibration increases and you move out of the lower chakra survival strategy motivations. And so we've got chakras, they're energy centers, you may know. You've got 7 of them, or you've got 8 if you include the one above, and you've got the earth chakra, and then you've got lots of little mini chakras in your hand. But basically, the lower chakras are mostly about survival. And you've heard me talk about baby souls and young souls. Most of the planet on Earth is about 75-85% baby souls and young souls that are concerned with survival and keeping up with the Joneses and being successful. And that's okay. There's no judgment upon them. That's just how their motives and how they operate. So when you become spiritual, you move into the heart center, your heart chakra, and then your throat chakra becomes more aware and you start speaking your truth. And then your third eye opens and you start seeing things that you don't ordinarily see on earth. And then your crown or your higher chakras, where you get into love and higher, what they call Christ consciousness. So when you start doing that, some of your life choices actually start shifting and changing. And they'll become really obvious. Like when I had my Kundalini and my Nirvikalpa Samadhi, in one day, I just went to my fridge and I took out, I used to buy 5 or 6 or 7 chicken breasts and just wrap them individually in plastic, and I'd have chicken every single night. I naturally didn't want red meat. It's just something I didn't like, even though I was studying bodybuilding in London at the time and reading Joe Wider health and fitness magazines, but I just didn't like red meat. But when I had spiritual enlightenment, I just didn't want to have anything to do with any process of killing and eating animals. It's just how I felt. So that's one thing you might do. You might instantly become vegetarian, or you might not fully go vegan. You may eat eggs, or you may not. And all of this will just be something that you feel. You'll just know within your being that eating animals just doesn't feel right for you. And I'm not putting a judgment upon the rest of the planet for everybody that does. I believe there are levels of consciousness that dictate how you choose to behave, and this is one of the changes. So other areas of purification, cigarettes, alcohol, or drugs. Now, when I worked in a furniture factory when I was 17, the guys used to open a little matchbox, and they had marijuana heads in there, and they all got high on marijuana, and then they went out and used their spindle molders and their machines and their thicknesses and their planers, and they in a week, I think 3 people chopped the tips of their fingers off. And I just intuitively knew, even when I was 17, that marijuana, or particularly in the workplace with dangerous machinery, was just a no-go. And then really angry music. They used to have a radio show called The Rock, and you got Metallica and Def Leppard and AC/DC. And I just intuitively knew that was wrong for me. When I was young, I was listening to Maria Callas and Vivaldi. So this is purification. You tend to move away from lower vibrational life choices, and you want to purify your life because you experience the enjoyment. You experience the enjoyment of the lifestyle change that having a higher vibration gives you. So I wanted to be around classical music. I didn't want to eat meat. I didn't like cigarettes, alcohol, or drugs. And also, you might also choose, when you purify, to avoid some of those people that do. It doesn't mean that you're making them wrong, and they're perfectly loved by God and accepted in the growth vibrational frequency that they're operating at. But for me personally, it was too low for my vibration. I had enough experience working in a furniture factory with people on drugs and people who were very angry and swearing and using bad language and authoritarian and control. And when I left, I had a mini car accident, and I had to pay to replace all of the panels on the utility truck because they didn't have insurance. But it was like God's way, or the angel's way, of moving me out of that factory because it was bad for my health. So purification as a number one, I could have put it on the basics number one, but purification, moving away from angry or low vibrational people, cigarettes, alcohol and drugs, and also the language you use. So there are still some spiritual people that I know that still say the F word. The C word is particularly offensive. You'll actually offend a lot of women if you use the C word. And my vibration's so high now that I have a parallel consciousness, a shared parallel consciousness with Mother Mary. And if I use a little bit of bad language, if I drop a hammer on my toe in the workshop, I go, and I'll come out with some expletives. And then Mother Mary will just sort of come in and she'll warn me to stop. And you may think, well, why does Mother Mary do that to Edward? Or why do we feel guilty or wrong? We don't have to feel guilty or wrong. It's just that it lowers your vibration considerably when you use bad language, but also any ghosts or naughty spirits that are in your neighborhood, if they hear you using bad language, they'll swoop in really quickly like a magnet. Now, why would they do that? Why would ghosts and lower astral entities come around you really quickly if you use bad language and use the F word or the C word? Well, the reason they do is because they're discerning. They're saying, what kind of person has a weak aura? What kind of person can I scoop off and steal some of their psychic energy? What kind of person can I put my tentacles into their solar plexus and start siphoning off their energy? What kind of person can I permanently attach myself and steal their energy? And this is kind of a lower astral entity attack. And they will do that when they find the person who's got a weak aura because they've used too much alcohol or drugs, or they've had sex with prostitutes. And if their aura is really weak, and if they're of low morals, their mind is not centered in higher vibrations, so they can manipulate really quickly and really easily. So you have it in your best interest in the early stages of spirituality to purify your life as much as possible. One, because you're going to gain the benefits of having a high vibrational lifestyle, which is full of beauty and grace and tranquility. And two, you're not going to get the naughty ghosts and the lower astral entities that want to manipulate you. Because if you think about this, most people probably don't realize this, and this is really Spirituality 101 basics, like really, really important. The first thing I used to say to myself when I was learning discernment on my path is I used to say, who is having this thought? So I really want you to think about that really carefully. I'll say hello to Angie and Jeanette. Say to yourself, who is having this thought? Does any human have or experience an original thought? So what is an original thought? If you're having a thought right now, okay, let's just think, oh well, I'm angry at my neighbour because they're using a chainsaw on a Sunday morning, and you think, well, okay, well, where does that thought come from? That might come from resentment from your childhood, so that could be your wounded inner child. You could be angry at something you see on TV and you want revenge, and you start having bad language come in your head. Well, if you've got a ghost around you that could be feeding you that information, you might be paraphrasing from a lower astral entity, and that thought might not actually belong to you. Winston Churchill used to call depression his black dog, because when he had bad thoughts, he would spiral into depression, and then he would have all this negativity and have this sort of black dog or this black shadow around him, and he probably didn't know, but they will be lower astral entities manipulating and changing Winston Churchill's thinking. So if you're having thoughts and you don't know where they're coming from, ask yourself, where did this thought come from? Are they purely your own? Do they belong to your wounded inner child? Do they belong to the beauty of your soul? Do they belong to the oneness of God, or do they belong to your angels? Do they belong to some lower astral entity that's feeding you that thought? Do they belong to where? So when you're thinking, and also throughout your entire lifetime, how do you know what thoughts or what programs or what mindset or what mental schemas actually really belong to you and the purity of your original soul, the real you? Because I can guarantee, pre-spiritual, about only 5% of all of your thinking will actually really, really belong to the healthiest part of your soul. Most of it is just strategies to avoid pain, or revenge, or hurt, or lower astral entities. And so most of the thoughts you have before spiritual awareness or awakening will not actually belong to you. So if you think, well, so do you mean most of my memories or most of my thoughts, like when I had my ex-lover leave me when I was at high school or whatever, and you thought the thoughts I had, the pain or the anger or the revenge or whatever that might be, did that actually belong to me? Is that the purity of my soul? So that's why purification is very, very important, because you want to be clear about about who you are and want to get as high vibrational as possible, pure, and avoid some of the lower astral entities influencing you. And a lot of depression is actually not depression at all. It's a form of psychic attack, which I'll go into later on. And so as a result, number two, centering how to use your breath is actually really hugely important, because you can, if you're feeling confused and you don't know what's going on spiritually and you're trying to discern and you're trying to purify your life, well, how do you do that? Well, centering is a really, really amazing exercise for beginners, and it doesn't take a genius to work it out. You just basically sit or stand, and I roll my shoulders back so I've got a really nice straight spine. When I roll my shoulders back, they actually kind of crack. That's from doing squats in the gym, trying to lift 217.5 kilograms, and it kind of compressed, and so I've got this cracking thing. So I kind of crack my spine, and when I crack my spine, it actually kind of releases some energy blocks in my spine. So roll your shoulders back, stand or sit, and put one or both hands on your heart. One hand is okay, or both hands, and then just breathe in through the nose. And out through the mouth. And if you do that once, it's really powerful. You can be standing like on the crossroads of Wellesley and Queen Street in Auckland and New Zealand, where I live, and I can stand there. People might be watching you. Why is this guy, closing his eyes and putting their hands on the heart? They might think you're a bit strange. But if you're in a shopping mall or mall or shopping mall in America or wherever, and you're just standing there and or putting one hand on your heart or sitting, and you could do this. At the end of it, you experience this beautiful quiet. And in that quiet calm, if you train to be a psychic or a medium or a spiritual mystic of any sort whatsoever, the breath is spiritual 101, the basics. I mean, everything I do now, even very, very advanced channeling, bringing in Mother Mary's voice, everything I do is right there. Just really... And that's all. Everything is right there. Even spiritual enlightenment, even the advanced stuff is just right there in that centering breath exercise. If you do it 2 or 3 times, you'll get it really easily. Sometimes, once is all you need. So centering is hugely important. Can't be overlooked. Even for advanced, super advanced teachers, you need to do this. So that's centering. Why is it important? Well, all the busyness, they talk in meditation, they talk about the monkey mind. You can learn meditation if you want, or you can learn prayer, or you can use contemplation, just walking out in the fields and looking at wildflowers and watching birds go by. But this slow breathing and this centering, and you can do it when you're walking as well, with your eyes open or eyes closed. And that's hugely important. So all that busyness, that monkey mind, or that black dog that Winston Churchill used to suffer from in depression, all of that stops when you're centered. Even if you're going through a huge dark night of the soul and getting psychically attacked, in that one moment at the end of your out-breath, you're pretty safe and secure. I mean, more or less. So that's number 2, centering. Now, obviously, number 3 would be understanding your body and energy and how that all works. And some people might think, oh, well, that's very confusing. You can read a book on chakras, and you can read a book on your aura, and you can study magnetic healing and do Reiki, and you can study this. If you want to specialize in the area of the body and energy and become a healer, I highly recommend, if you feel drawn to do that, do as much study as possible. It's just really fascinating. My beginning in understanding my body and how my energy worked was from my first Kundalini experience, and I experienced this spiraling of energy. I saw it as smoke that exited the top of my head and looked back at me, and it was like a snake, and it was and I had it in a meditation by Osho Bhagwan Rajneesh in North London. I think it was 7:30 on a Thursday, where they run those Kundalini meditation classes. And so I experienced this Kundalini. And then when I was in Los Angeles 2 years later, and I was meditating with a Buddhist monk from Burma, but he was Australian, I sat there and I literally felt like a washing machine. I felt my bottom of my of my hips were rotating clockwise, and my rib cage was rotating against it anti-clockwise, and I just got a bit scared and confused because it would go one way and then go the other way and then go the other way and then really start spinning, and I had to literally slap my legs to just reaffirm that I'm on, Terra, Terra Nova, or the Earth, and I had to slap my legs just to tell myself and to get that biofeedback from my body that I'm not spinning. It's just my energy. So sometimes energy can do things in your body that is really super powerful, and particularly when you study Reiki, you'll feel like a whooshing of electricity or energy go down your legs. So energy is something that can really be felt strongly. So if you come from a scientific background like me, and I did evening classes and study in colleges, in Kingsway College in King's Cross, and Hammersmith and West London College, and Birkbeck and other different places in London. I studied human biology, psychology, and philosophy over about 5 years. And so I was really, what do they call that? Left brain, really logical. So if you come from a logical, scientific background and you don't believe in energy, well, just do some energy work or study your body spiritually, and you'll be surprised. Some really kooky, amazing things can happen. Yeah, quite amazing. So learn about the basic chakra system. I won't go through it now because it's too in depth. The root chakra, the base chakra. The most important ones are your solar plexus. If you want to learn about energy of emotional healing and emotions and the powerful stuff, as where you're centered in your solar plexus, and your solar plexus is just at the top of your tummy, top of your abdominals. And your heart chakra is really hugely important, obviously. So the heart chakra is where love is experienced. And then you've got your throat chakra, which is if you've been repressed and you need to speak your truth, and singing lessons or expression, that's the throat chakra. And this third eye is when you start to study to become a psychic or a clairvoyant medium. You'll get images and visions here when you close your eyes when you do meditation. So learning about this chakra is hugely important for a lot of psychics, obviously. The crown chakra is highest, higher, oneness consciousness, Christ consciousness, which is just basically the highest level of human experience, is to be in divine love, connected to the universe, and experience the oneness where it's not about your ego, it's about everything, and you embodying the totality of the universe, which sounds a bit advanced, or a bit and it does sound advanced, and it is. So learn about the body, learn about energy. What does it mean? This is really, really important. I actually get really excited talking about this because I find this fun. But and I experience this when I'm really tired and run down. So if you didn't get much sleep, if you only slept for 4 hours, and you're tired, or you're drunk and you just had a hangover, or you're nutritionally deficit and you forgot to eat breakfast, and then you're just really frazzled, and then you go out into a busy shopping mall, or for me, I get it when I'm in the library. Sometimes there are homeless people that go to the library where I used to go, and sometimes the vibration can get very, very low, and sometimes the staff, this is no judgment against librarians in general, but some of the librarians I've met are kind of baby souls that operate at that authoritarian baby soul survival, low vibration. They can be difficult or icky to be around for me personally. So when I go to libraries, or when I go to shopping malls where the vibration is really low, you'll really get a powerful experience of your energy field. You'll feel, for me, not where my heart is here, but actually between my shoulder blades. There's an area between if your two shoulder blades look like this, and you've got your rhomboids, and the rhomboids are a series of muscles because they're rhomboidal in shape, and they move the scapula together. And in that gap, that circle there where your heart is, there's a point, an energy center, which is your chakra spinning in the back of you. And when you're really tired and run down, I just feel like I can't eat. I know it sounds really funny. I have to walk sideways past certain negative people. I can't show my that circle in my back to certain people when I'm run down and tired, and if they're very low vibrational people, because I'll actually feel a physical pain. It's like a pressure and you can lose energy from that center, at the back of your shoulder blades. So, and I feel it really strongly. Um, and so you can lose energy, and you can go into a shopping mall and only be there 1 hour, and you're just looking for the exit sign, like, how do I get out? I just feel tired. I just feel like irritable, like my skin feels prickly. I don't feel right. And so if you're ignoring that sensation and you're just going, well, I'm just, I'm a bit tired. I, had a drink last night. I didn't have breakfast. Yeah, okay. But no, it's actually part of a psychic attack. Or what is a psychic attack? I'll go into that later. But it's part of your aura. You're losing your aura. I mean, you think your aura is like a bioelectric energy field. They can measure it in medical science now. They can measure it, and they can take, is it called Kirlian photography or not? I don't know what it's called, but you can even get an aura scan. They've got a certain camera that can do that. But they can measure the bioelectric energy field. And most people, if you learn to meditate and go really super relaxed, sometimes when I'm really, really tired, and this happens to me, it might happen to you. If it does, it's really exciting when it happens for the first time. But you're really tired, and your eyes are kind of like go into that sort of semi-closed, and you kind of go out of focus, and you're like this, like a bit tired. And then when you look over to someone, you'll go, wow, what happened? And you'll see like a 1 inch of this like fuzzy. You'll see their aura, and it'll look a bit like a shadow, or it'll be a little bit glowy, a little bit shadow and a bit fuzzy, like a neon light. And you go, wow, what was that? And you might see it around objects, like a picture frame, or you might see it around trees, but it's strong around people. I've only seen auras in full colour 3 times. I was working for Stevenson and Turner Architects, and there was a really lovely secretary who just had a loving family, and I just went blink, and I was also tired because I was really relaxed, because then your eyes change when you're relaxed, and you can see different things. And I'll talk to you more about blue lights and angels later on, but because seeing energy is just amazing when it happens. It's really exciting. So I just went, and just for a millisecond, I just went, whoa. And I saw, it was like, she looked like Sai Baba. Sai Baba is a spiritual teacher, died, but he had this big afro. And she had this big afro. It was about like 14 inches away from her head, and it was like that. But it was pink. It was like glorious, like, I don't know, what kind of pink? Like electric, like hot pink. Like, you remember in the 80s, and people wore hot electric colours in the 1980s, like Wham and, whatever, Aha, whatever. Well, yeah, it was, and so I saw her aura, and I was just really glowing. And I said, oh, I just saw your aura. And she said, oh, what colour was it? I said, it's pink. So if you're lucky to have that experience, but when you learn about your body and energy, these are some of the experiences that can happen. It's really beautiful. It's really glorious. And then when you see auras for the first time, you might become less skeptical and less medical model, or less scientific in your way of looking at the world, and you say, wow, things are glowing and there's energy emanating from everything. So this physical matter, I also used to work in London as a secretary, and I used to get on my computer, and sometimes on the London Underground, sometimes you get late and you'd be stressed and frazzled and just tired. I think I worked at the Bank of Kuwait, which is around Selfridges, just around the back of Selfridges down the side street. And I put my hands on the computer, first thing, and just take my coat off, and I put my hands on the computer, turn it on, and then boom. And as I just started typing, I saw blue lightning bolts of electricity. They weren't electricity. There was a story about someone that they said that they saw their arms, and they thought they saw flames, and they thought that they were on fire, and they patted their arms, but they were just seeing the aura. And I saw blue flames shooting up and down my arms, and I got a shock because I was so relaxed, because I was tired. And then first thing in the morning, and I saw blue fire on both arms, and I thought I was temporarily on fire with blue flames, because you know how flames, they've got that blue tinge sometimes. So I saw blue flames on my arm. So anyway, I apologise for talking too long, but it's just fun. The body and energy, it's actually fun. So why did I want to talk about that? Well, it's just fun. Then I want to talk about empowerment and avoiding the three-dimensional matrix mind, because this is all part of that process. When you start to realize that the whole world is made of energy, and that you are spirit, and the body is not the only thing there is in physical matter, then you start to feel empowered and connected to the greater oneness of the universe and part of nature and everything. And so the way that some baby souls, or excuse me for calling them baby souls, but if you get the idea that planet Earth has had a history, and we've been, using swords and fighting, for eons, and we're kind of getting out of the sludge of our spiritual or conscious evolution on planet Earth. And as you raise your vibration, then you'll discern and you'll make choices. And some of the people that you're associated with, they fed a certain methodology, a certain mindset, a certain way of thinking, and everybody collectively agreed to take on this type of thinking. So I mentioned Selfridge. There used to be a television program called Mr. Selfridge or Mrs. Selfridge, and it was about set in post or Victorian England. And I think if we got on a time machine right now and went back to Selfridges or to Charles Dickens or to William Hogarth, and you saw the way people talked and treated each other, they operated in this really authoritarian, like even in the 1960s they used to say, you better pull your socks up, and if you tell a lie, God will put a black spot on your tongue, and when you get enough black spots you'll go to hell. So we had a certain mindset, the way they talked to children in the 1960s, and gladly we don't have that anymore. So when you become spiritual, there becomes this big choice, and you never saw the choice before, but now you will see it. You'll go, wow, these people have been thinking like this, and they, like in England, one thing I don't like about English culture, and I'm going to slam the English now, and I'm English, this is one thing I don't like. I won't talk about my cousin and what he did, but when I went back to Bristol and I met my cousin, I was surprised that it didn't matter if you were working class or middle class or upper class, everybody did the same thing. They were really, really predictable, and they still do. They go to work and they all go to the pub. They text their friends and they say, what pub are you going tonight? Are we going to do a pub crawl, or we just go to one? Should we go to the Cotswolds, and shall we go to the Lake District and go to our favourite pub? And a pub is a bar where you drink alcohol, and everybody will buy around. So if you've got 5 or 6 of you, you have to wait until it's your turn, and everybody has to have a turn, and you buy what's called a round of drinks. And so if that costs £2 per drink, you could be spending £15 or £20 when it comes to your round. And I won't go into it because it's too long. But that's a certain mindset that England has. You have to go to the pub after work, and that's like 5, 6, maybe 7 days a week. If you've seen The Office with that funny actor, I forget his name, Ricky Gervais, you'll learn about English culture. And this is one thing I'm ashamed about my own English culture. They just go to the pub all the time. I think because it's grey weather and they haven't got time to do anything else. So that is a certain three-dimensional matrix mind mentality. And then if you become spiritual, you can say, well, maybe there's another way of living. Maybe I don't have to go to the pub. Maybe I don't have to hobnob and conform. If you study Stanley Milgram and Sharif and all those other psychologists, they talked a lot about authoritarian personality and about conformity and group think. And then when you become spiritual, you say, I'm not going to do the group think. I'm looking for my tribe. And then you'll go out and look for your tribe. What's your tribe? Well, your tribe is, if you're a starseed or a highly evolved soul, in reincarnation, before you were born, you had other people that had a higher spiritual consciousness that you interacted with, and then you'll spend the rest of your life looking for your tribe, and you won't have to go to the pub anymore and play groupthink. Okay, so that's learning how to be empowered and how to find your tribe and avoid the general muddy thinking of regular humans. All judgment aside, I apologize. Okay, I've been talking too much. All right, number 4 is psychic attack and reptilians and dark night of the soul. I know I'm very happy and I sound fluffy, and I'll try and keep it fluffy, but it's just inevitable. whether you will or you won't, it kind of depends. If you take your vibration really high and you do lots of angel work, the dark forces of the universe don't want you to do goody two shoes stuff in your community. They want to keep the planet low in its vibration. They want to have power and control. So anybody that does beautiful spiritual work, they automatically attack you. So you will get psychically attacked. After 10 days of Nirvikalpa and Samadhi and Kundalini, I saw 5 shadows at the bottom of my bed, and I got scared, and I had sleep paralysis, and I woke up with a trickle and a blood clot, and someone told me through channeling that I was abducted by reptilian and grey aliens, and they put an implant up my nose. But that I personally chose to have that as a discernment experience, and I was really glad that I did, but it was terrifying at the time. So dark night of the soul can also relate to healing. So number 4A I'm calling is learn about healing. Healing is hugely important. Like I said earlier, some people approach spirituality because they might have come through a cancer remission or had a heart attack or a car crash, and it's a huge wake-up call, and then they might fail with doctors. I mean, this happens all the time. They go to the doctor, they get misdiagnosed. I had problems with my feet, and I went to a rheumatologist, and for 2.5 years they said that I had writer's arthritis because I had HLA-B27, which is a marker on my blood, and their mindset was so rigid. And then, I won't go into my story too long, but then I found out it was plantar fasciitis. But I had to go to alternative medicine at the British School of Osteopathy to learn that. And so if you've got a medical problem right now and you're having problems with the traditional medical model, you might be forced to go to a Chinese herbalist, you might be forced to go to a naturopath or to go to the British School of Osteopathy in Trafalgar Square like I did in London. And then you'll get this big wake-up call, and spiritually what you learn from that, from healing your body of cancer or whatever it might be, you might choose to become spiritual. So healing is hugely important, and you may know that I'm an inner child therapist, and I won't wax lyrical about that for too long at all. But empowering, part of empowerment, and learning to love yourself and avoiding the three-dimensional matrix mind and the group mindset of the people that you go down the pub with and drink, beer or Tennent's or Tetleys or whatever it is. You'll have to empower your inner child and tell your inner child that they're beautiful and that you love them and that you're going to nurture them and take care of them. And then you find more of your center. You found your spiritual center through breath and centering, and then you find your emotional center in your solar plexus through healing and crying and reconnecting with your inner child and reaffirming some self-love, new mental schemas. And then you'll find your heart love and your center, and you might use Jesus or Mary or someone to bring in some of that divine feminine or that divine energy for your inner child, and you'll learn how to heal your body and your psychology of your mind, and then your chakras and your solar plexus and your emotional pain or your trauma or your PTSD through inner child healing and new empowering mindset techniques. So number 5, I've said choose a religion or a path or be self-guided or get information from angels. Now, sometimes people make these choices. Do I want to become a Buddhist? And it's really frustrating because you might go to a Tibetan Buddhist Lama like I did and then start chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And I just found it very robotic and just a waste of time. I went to singing bhajans, which is singing Indian songs at Sai Baba meetings where you go and take your shoes off and the men sit on the right, I think, and the women sit on the left, and you sing these beautiful Hindu songs, and it's just divine, it's lovely. And I enjoyed that for a while. I went to some yoga classes where I did Sada Yoga and Siddhi Yoga and Sadhana, well, anyway. You might study under Swami Sivananda or Swami Muktananda or whoever. So you might choose a path like that in the beginning like I did. But I just moved through them very quickly because I didn't find satisfaction. I went through a wedding ritual to become a Sufi. A Sufi is one of the Muslim religions in Tehran. They've got a temple called the Namatalai Order of Sufis, because I love their beautiful calm and their non-ego. For me, moving away from your ego, and because when I had spiritual enlightenment, I discovered first and foremost that I didn't exist, that I was nothing. I don't mean nothing like, when you say to someone, well, you're nothing, I don't like you. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the spiritual ego, the identity, you. So me being Edward, working middle class, English born, educated in New Zealand, a father who was a woodcarver. Those are all mind constructs, and they make up your personality, but it's actually not you. It's not real. It's just a construct for temporarily for this moment on planet Earth. But when you die and when you go off, you'll be something completely different. So what is that essential core? What's that real you? Well, that's without ego. So in spiritual enlightenment, you'll learn that that's a state of nothing. It doesn't exist. So, what am I forgot what I was talking about. Anyway, I forgot my initial track. I go on this, I go on tangents. So, choosing a religion or choosing a path, I've totally forgot. That's all right. So, I just like the idea in Sufism of studying to become nothing. In Sufism, they talk about the nafs, N-A-F. If you listen to Princess Anne, she's in England. They're upper middle class. They talk about something being naf, and naf is something that's bad quality. Well, that comes from Sufism, and so those are qualities of the ego that they try and get rid of, and just get down to your core essence, where there's nothing. There's just oneness in the universe. Anyway, I feel I'm talking too much. I want to get back on track. So when you choose a religion or a path, don't be disillusioned if they don't work for you. They didn't work for me. I kind of moved through them. I learnt to pick out little bits, and I had this supermarket shopping trolley approach to spirituality where I just got little bits, read a few books, and I just moved on. And so for me, working with my guides, working with Mother Mary, and then learning that I was a Syrian and getting Palladian channeling from someone I was directed to go and visit in Los Angeles, enabled me to move through all of these human religions and when you talk about a spiritual path, this is the confusing thing, and this is something very important to understand, is that most spiritual paths or spiritual religions or even books or even step-by-step programs, they're all earth-based. Now, when I say earth-based, I mean that there was someone who wrote them. They might have had some angelic download at the time, fine, no problem with that. But many religions are earth-based, and they're mind-based. So I looked on the internet, and they say there's 5 different types of spirituality when you're looking for a religion or a path. The first one is mystical spirituality. And then there's authoritarian spirituality, and then there's intellectual spirituality, and then there's service spirituality, and then there's social spirituality. So when you're choosing a path, I'll go through each 5 so I can explain. Mystical spirituality is really what people do in silence when they totally engage in the process of mysticism. And sometimes they use that word occult, which sounds like a bad word. And it's kind of like, think it's like magical or whatever, but it's not. Mysticism is just the private process of spending lots of time in prayer or contemplation or meditation. And some monks might even go to the foothills of, Nepal or the Himalayas, and they might go into a cave for 5 years and just meditate all day. I did a tiny bit of that, and then I got what I needed and I moved out. So mystical spirituality is a personal spiritual process of practice. And then authoritarian spirituality is what you get in religion. So if you become a Catholic or Church of England or whatever, it can be quite authoritarian. You get people that give you a list of rules, and you have to adhere to it and follow these rules. But it's not from God. It's all just human rule based. It's not spiritual at all. And then you can get intellectual spirituality, where people study theology at university, at Trinity College in Dublin or wherever that is, and they can study how to nitpick on every fine detail in the Bible, or it could be the Quran, or it could be the Bhagavad Gita, whatever. So they nitpick, and that's intellectual spirituality. So intellectual spirituality is really what you call an oxymoron. An oxymoron is a juxtaposition of total contrasts that cancel each other out. So if you're intellectual and if you're in your brain, you can't be in your heart. So intellectual spirituality by definition is actually not spirituality at all. And number 4, then you've got service spirituality. Service spirituality is probably one of the best, because it's where you come to a realization that you're part of God, and then you want to be of service to God. And God's not a person, so you can't be of direct service to something invisible in the sky. So you do the next best thing, and you be in service to other human beings that are struggling, and you belong to a charity, and you might choose to do that. And that's called service spirituality, which is, in India they call that, do they call that karma yoga? One of them is the application of what you do with your spirituality. And then number 5, social spirituality, which is kind of what we're doing right here. It's social media, Facebook, connecting with people, using your love from your heart to reach out and educate or share and connect and experience love with others socially. So that's social spirituality, which is what I do the most of. So for me personally, I do lots of mystical spirituality, lots of time in prayer and contemplation in nature and with music. I do no authoritarian spirituality. I have no interest in belonging to a church. I do no intellectual spirituality at all. I have read some books, but I find them boring. I have done some service spirituality where I belong to a charity, like suicide counselling or what have you. And then I do lots of social spirituality through Facebook or general telephone or camera time, and I connect with people. So I probably do 80% social spirituality and 20% mystical spirituality. So if you're choosing a path, there are no right and wrongs. It has a lot to do with your soul and where you are. If you're a baby soul, you'll do a lot of authoritarian spirituality because you need that someone to tell you what to do. Like, a lot of baby souls, they want to join the army, they want to work for the city council, they want a guaranteed job and security, and they want people to tell them what to do because they haven't got enough strength of their own soul connection to know how to make life decisions. And then if you're a young soul and you want to be important and achieve, then you might do some intellectual spirituality and try and get a PhD in theology, or you might do some social spirituality and join a church to be around people. And then only when you get into the higher vibrations and spirituality and evolutions of soul evolution do you do lots of mystical and oneness consciousness and with being of service. So number 5A, I've talked about how to reach or contact higher power or angels, and that's a separate subject I can go into, which I won't. But it's a very, very important choice in Spirituality 101. The basics is that if you don't do the religion and if you don't choose to read books because you find it too boring and just uneventful, the most advanced books that I ever read was Teaching Humanity, The Awakened Humanity by Virginia Essene, and then You Are Becoming a Galactic Human by Virginia Essene and Sheldon Nidal, which is all about Syrian and Palladian channeling essentially, and it reached a certain peak for me, and then I stopped reading books on channeling. I found lots of holes in them and I didn't find them all to be 100% pure, and I found channeled books, and Cryon by Lee Carroll I ended up finding out that was reptilian. I didn't like Barbara Marciniak, Bringers of the Dawn. I found that to be I found it too much reptilian influence in the world of channeling, and I stopped reading books entirely. And you may decide how you're going to do that. That's up to you. You have to discern that for yourself. So, but if you don't want to do that, then you've got to do everything mystically, like I do, and like I teach. And I teach techniques through page numbers and books, and then eventually telepathy, where I'm just talking directly to Mother Mary, and all my information comes from either from my feeling or from contact with angels, and various techniques to do that, and then telepathy, and then shared parallel consciousness where your angels are your vibration is so high that you're just buddy with your angels and you're dovetailed, and their consciousness literally lives in you, and whenever you're thinking you can feel their consciousness in parallel with yours, and that's a very beautiful place to be. That, for me, that's probably the highest place you can be spiritually, is where you're dovetailing your consciousness with a higher angelic guide, and you live like an angel here on earth with their secondary support structure in your consciousness. So number 6, I've talked about career change. Obviously, when you're making all these changes, and if you're like me working in banking, or if you're just working for the man, and you're just pushing capitalism and help the planet use up more fossil fuels, and there's no purpose in it, naturally you'll change your career and work with the elderly or the sick or animals, or work in a nursery with plants. Or I've just been speaking to someone recently. I gave a psychic reading 3 days ago to a woman, and she said she wanted careers advice. And as soon as I tuned in, I saw a florist, and I said, "I just see you becoming a florist." And she said, "Yes, Edward, that's right. I've been offered to sell or to buy for sale a floristry business that's up available. What do you think?" And then Mother Mary downloaded to me all these ideas that suggested making little boxes with gift packets to put one flower in there as a token gift for someone out of love, and then also to ship orchids or saffron to restaurants in Tokyo. And my angels came up with all these ideas for a career change for this person that had been working in corporate and accounting and what have you. So that's Spirituality 101, the basics, stage 2. Although I've listed pretty much everything that I can think of, I'm sure there are probably others that I haven't gone into, because spirituality for beginners, that's the problem with spirituality for beginners, is that it's the most stressful time for someone with spirituality. It's the beginning, because it's just so full of confusion. If you think like Neo, Mr. Anderson from the movie The Matrix, when he becomes self-aware for the first time, it's just mind-blowing. And you've also got to contend with, am I going to have a psychic attack and get attacked by reptilians? Am I going to go through the dark night of the soul? I've been deluded, and I've had cancer. I've been angry at my parents and full of revenge, and I've been in the three-dimensional matrix mind construct for so long, and now I'm awakening. I don't know if I like this, because then I'm going to have to empower myself. I'm going to have to stop relying on the government or my boss, and I've got to make an income out of this. I've got to find new friends. I've got to talk to angels, and I don't know if channeling is right for me, and so it's hard. It's really, really, really hard. I didn't have a teacher, although after 2 years I met someone who channeled Palladians, and that was my real great foundation. I had a good friend who was she was a Palladian Christ. She was really, really high, super high vibration, and I got 20 years of Palladian downloaded channeling through automatic writing, so I got lucky. I was really, really lucky. But in the first 2 years, I had psychic attack, and I jumped from religion to religion and book to book, and I found it very unsatisfying and very, very, very disillusioning, or disillusionment or disillusioning. It was the first 2 years was really, really, really hard. So Spirituality 101, the basics, stage 2, it's difficult, but it can be very beautiful and very rewarding. And if you're courageous enough, you can be like Atreyu, like the warrior in Never-Ending Story, and have power over the nothing, taking over planet Earth, and you can fight, and you can win, and you can find your original Christ consciousness when she, the little girl, the princess in that movie, held the little light in her hand. So it makes me emotional. It's really beautiful. Yeah, if you want some inspiration, watch Never-Ending Story. It's really lovely. So Spirituality 101, the basics. It can be scary, it can be hard, it can be very challenging. Stepping out of the normal traditional mind speak. I read a tiny bit about a review of Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley, sorry, and talking about COVID-19 and millennials and mind speak and control and various other things, and where we've come and what the future has to offer, and it's very interesting. Yeah, it's too much. It's a bit heady. It's a bit big, so I won't go into that now. But I will talk about that in the future. So this does go onto YouTube. So remember to press those buttons. I won't go on about that. Normally I scratch my nose because I get really itchy. I haven't done that today, thank God. So yes, goodbye and good night and good morning wherever you are in the world. Spirituality 101, the basics, can be fun and can be scary and can be confusing. So if you need help, there are people out there that understand and know about these things. So seek help and advice from whoever you feel guided to. So love you lots, and bye for now. Bye Daniel, Wendy and everyone else who's been watching in.